Okay, so to start, we do our mise en place. We need flour, getting our pan hot, got the crock pot in and getting warmed up, got our chops. We're gonna salt and pepper the meat, and then on front and back, and then dredge it in flour front and back. Okay, we've got salt and pepper directly on the pork chops. I like to season the meat and not the flour because the flour is not what we're focused on. We want the meat to taste good. Doing around 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of butter into the hot pan. Your fat, the butter, and in this case, a little olive oil is what makes your gravy. I put olive oil in, maybe a tablespoon or 2. And it increases the smoke point on the butter so the butter doesn't burn so easily. Okay, probably medium-ish heat. Just depends on your stove. So you take your pork chops, and then your seasoned pork chops, dredge them in the flour. Like that. Shake off any excess. And into the hot pan to fry. Get those all in there and going. If it takes more than 1 round, because you don't want to crowd your pan, then more than 1 round. I'll turn my heat up just to make sure the pan stays nice and hot. I like to get a good crust on my pork chops. You can see I got some water ready for making gravy. So when these are done, you'll notice they're getting nice and caramelized, getting some good color. That helps seal all that beautiful juicing. And all of these little bits that end up in the pan are called fond, F-O-N-D, and that is what gives you a lot of your flavor in your gravy. You can also get chicken stock or chicken broth from the grocery store, and that'll add flavor into your gravy. You don't just have to use water. In this case, you want your water cold, and I'll explain that later. Okay, you're going to see that both sides of our pork chops have this nice kind of crunchy, crusty sear on them. That nice dark color gives it a lot of flavor. So you want to look for all of that nice dark coloring on it. If you have to flip them back over and do them a couple minutes back on the other side again, then don't worry about it. These are going to be cooked well done in the crock pot, so it doesn't really matter. Since the butter is what is giving you your gravy, a lot of it can get absorbed up into the flour on the pork chop. So if you feel like you need to add some extra butter to give you more liquid in the pan and to make a little more gravy, then just add a little more butter. All of the pork chops are now in the crock pot waiting. So you'll see there's all of this really nice, buttery, thick goodness. That's going to make your gravy. That is actually quite a bit of butter. That's going to make a lot of gravy, so we don't need to add anything else. So things that go really well with pork chops are apples and onions. So I am going to take some apple juice. Usually I'd use hard cider, but what I've got is apple juice. I'm going to start with the onions. I'm going to get the onions caramelized. So you do not have to do the onion part. It's totally optional. I know whether or not you can hide them in there from Lacey. I cut them up pretty fine. And then I'm going to cook these down until they're super caramelized and really sweet. So it's going to take about 5 minutes to cook those down. Now that the onions are nice and caramelized, we're going to throw some flour in there. And we're going to cook the flour down into the onions, and that's going to make a nice thick roux. It's going to make our gravy. So one of the big things with flour is that you want to cook the taste of the flour out. So once you get it in the pan, you're going to get that nice and thick and chunky, but we're going to get rid of the taste of the flour. I probably put in a couple tablespoons, and again, this is going to make a ton of gravy. So we're just going to let that flour taste cook out really quick. It only takes a minute to just let that cook down. Got a nice thick paste. And this is going to be a pretty decently dark gravy. The longer you cook the flour and the darker you let the flour get, the darker and nuttier your gravy is going to taste. So I like apple cider. Usually I use hard cider. I don't have that. Apples and onions are great with this, so we're just going to pour in some apple juice. Maybe, I don't know, probably around half a cup-ish. That's not exact. Whenever you work with a hot roux, so the butter and flour is hot, you want your liquid to be cold, and that prevents it from congealing and getting lumpy. That's how you prevent a lumpy gravy, rather than having to stir and mash it out. If you work with cold water and hot roux, or hot water and cold roux, which means you make your roux and then cool it down and then add it to hot water. That's another way to go, but you want them to be opposite. So you're going to see that this is kind of cooking down and making a nice thick paste, and that's going to add that, just that little bit of apple juice is going to add a ton of flavor into this. So then we're going to start adding cold water, again hot water or cold water, hot roux, and we're going to stir that in until it makes our nice thick gravy, and then we're going to pour that on top of the pork chops, and you're going to salt and pepper this to taste. So remember, there is a little bit of salt on your pork chops, but it's not enough to flavor the whole dish. So you want to add some extra salt and pepper to your gravy. And then I also like to throw in maybe 1 or 2 bay leaves just to give it a nice earthy kind of flavor. So that's how you make pork chops. Get them in the slow cooker on high by about maybe 1 o'clock, and they'll be ready to eat between 5 and 6. So you'll see kind of the thickness of this. It's not really thick. One of the things people look for in a gravy is called nappe, and nappe is where when you dip a spoon in it, that it really kind of coats the spoon. So I'll show you. This is a little thinner than nappe, because you'll see it just kind of, there's a little bit of a coat, but it's not all that thick. So look at that again. It's a little bit of a coat, not that thick. So it's a little thin, and that's good for this because the liquid is going to continue to cook out in the slow cooker. So you might even end up wanting to add a little extra liquid halfway through the cooking process if the gravy just looks too thick. So we're going to take that and pour all that yumminess on top of those pork chops, put a couple bay leaves in, put the lid on, and let it go.